Good morning. Good morning. How the devil are you doing this fine day? Good morning to Dan Cullen, who missed yesterday's show. I overslept, got distracted, one of those things, but he's back in this morning, Dan. And thank you for your comments on yesterday's show. Yeah, I actually quite enjoyed yesterday's show. And we've got plenty more to show you today as well, including a look back at the Volvo Days event, which was earlier this week, which was absolutely fantastic. We're also going to show you a bit more on kind of the lesser of the two excavators that JCB launched. I think everyone's got caught up in the 520X because it's the biggest machine that JCB have ever made. But they also launched a 40-tonner as well, the 420X. We're going to be bringing that a bit later on. Mercy is here as well. Good morning to you. Thank you very much indeed for being here. Loads to show you, but I want to tell you about a thing. I mean, I was going to wait until a few more people pitched up, but it may just be the way that the chat is working. Mark Whiting has just arrived, so I'm free now to talk about it. We found on this show that the sweet spot for videos generally is around about the 2.5 minute mark. Sometimes they're shorter. Sometimes, like yesterday when we did the deep dive on the 520X, it was a bit longer. But we found that's a bit of a sweet spot for this segment of the show. But as a result of that, a lot of what we tend to film and cover kind of gets lost in translation, I guess. We recently had a whole day playing with Bobcat machines over in Czechia. We've now had a full day of playing with machines in Sweden. Well, we have filmed the absolute, what is the technical term? We've filmed the tits off of these things. So we've got in the can, we've got a Bobcat film that's 25 minutes long. We've got a Volvo film that may be even, well, it probably will be even longer than that. But we're not going to show them here on this show. We're actually going to do a series of evening shows where we go deeper dive and really take you through. And I can tell you with the Bobcat one, you know, there's the travel, there's the food, there's the equipment, there's the people. The Volvo one even more so. It's literally, the film begins or will begin with our arrival at Arlanda Airport in Stockholm, travel to Eskilstuna, the hotel, the party, the museum, the machines, the razzmatazz, and everything else. So we've got, as I say, we've got a couple of really big films coming up, and we've got another couple of opportunities. Feel quite fortunate and honoured even. We are going up to see the testing of the Hydromax, which I realise is not sort of frontline construction, but it is JCB's latest attempt at the world speed record. Only this time they're going hydrogen. So we're doing that in a couple of weeks' time. I'm also going to spend some time with the fine folks at Komatsu to get the real down and dirty on the PC220 LCI-12, which to my mind is probably the elite excavator at the moment. I'm going to be doing that next week. So my plan, wherever possible, is we're going to actually start producing some proper feature-length films. Not entirely sure of when we're going to broadcast them. We've always found that Wednesday evening, 7 o'clock, has been a bit of a sweet spot. But I'd quite like to build up a bit of a back catalogue of these. I think one of the challenges we always have with things like the Volvo Days, that in the past there would have been a mad rush because there were new machines there, and there would have been a mad rush to get home and let's get something on LinkedIn, let's get something on Instagram, which, you know, we've kind of abided by that. But I think there's so much more that we could be showing you, and that is the intention of these new films. As I say, the Bobcat one is already in the can. The Volvo one is about 90% done, I would imagine. Fred's got a bit of work to do on it, but they will be coming to you very, very soon. So if you have any particular preference on when you would like to see them, then please let me know. Please let me know. Dan says, sitting in the Bell B20, I wonder why manufacturers why do manufacturers not put these seats in machines? It's completely comfortable. I guess room would be one of the issues, I guess. He also says, I see Blackwood plant in Scotland got the first Komatsu PC210 in the UK. I saw that. And they're very fortunate to have it because it is a damn fine machine. As I say, if you've got any particular thoughts on when we could do these, let's call them feature films. I don't mean they are feature films in the Hollywood sense, but they are feature-length films. If you've got any suggestions on when you would like us to actually show those, as I say, my personal feeling is like Wednesday at 7:00 at night. But if you've got any preference on that, please let us know. Missing a few of our regulars. No sign of Jim or Gary or Chris as yet, although that may just be the chat playing up. And Dan saying, I feel a Wednesday evening. That's always been our experience. Wednesday evenings I think it helps break up the week, and you've not got the manic start to the Friday and everybody desperate to get home on a Friday. So maybe that is the sweet spot. I'll put it to the test. Anyway, with even though we've got some of our regulars missing, I'm going to kick things off. I'm going to roll the intro and get this show on the road. Speaking of show regulars, as I was just now, John the Bull is in our midst. Morning, John. Good of you to join us. Thank you for being here. Dan is saying 8 p.m. Wednesday be a sweet spot as everyone's had dinner and be relaxed. Yeah, maybe we push it back a little bit. Because I've got to be honest, whenever I've done these 7:00 shows, and we've done lots of them over the years, there is a temptation to say, we'll do that. By about 7:45, my belly is saying, you should have had dinner before you did this. Maybe that's the way. Maybe I can actually get some dinner on board and then do it. Stand by your beds because the Reverend Paul Latham is in our midst, saying morning all. Morning to you, Paul. Thank you very much indeed for being here. Let me give you a very quick idea of what we have in store for you today. It is Thursday the 4th of June. Welcome to the Breakfast Show. I am your host, Mark Anthony, the Walrus of Demolition, the Lord High Chancellor of live streaming, the authentic voice of the global demolition industry, and the model of the brand new Bobcat hat. Yeah. Corduroy. Shouldn't be wearing a corduroy hat in June, but it's quite cold out there, so I am. Anywho, people, in today's show, Volvo Days 2026 was a massive success, and I'm about to show you why. Kramer aims high with its latest telescopic handler. Komatsu displays its intelligence, and ahead of its Hillhead debut, we're going to be looking at the JCB 420X. The 420X. Ken Hatcher has just arrived. I'm not sure how long he's going to be here because I've moved my van and has bad signal. Wow. Like a cap. Yeah, this was actually kind of a gift. No, not kind of. It was a gift. I screwed up when we were at Bobcat last week. When we were at Bobcat last week, I was so busy filming that I missed the invitation to go up to the merch shop. Fred, thankfully, was paying attention, and he went and he picked me up one of these. I've got something very similar in green, which I know you've seen me. This is kind of woolly, this business here. Corduroy here and corduroy down the side. He picked this up for me, and I think it looks damn fetching. And you may have spotted the shirt as well. ConExpo ConAg 2026, the press corps. That's me. I mean, I realise it's out of date now, but it came to the top of my wardrobe, and I thought, what the hell? Why not? Mick Norton has just arrived from sunny, rainy, thundery, wintry. I've run out of superlatives. He's from Wakefield, don't you know? Dan said, Cullen says, I couldn't stop laughing yesterday. Last week, everyone was complaining about the heat. Now they're all complaining it's too wet. Unbelievable. Yeah, I mean, last week, I did shows in shorts and t-shirts. I had a fan going on in the background to keep me cool, and even then, I was getting very, very uncomfortable. Got up this morning, put a jumper on. Yeah. What's going on? I was assured we had global warming. Feels like global chilling at the moment. Right, let's kick things off. We're going to start with a smidgen, a soupçon, if you will, of Caterpillar, and then we're going to take you to Eskilstuna to give you an insight into what the Volvo Days is all about. Right, Volvo Days. So Volvo Construction Equipment have become very adept at hosting their own events. They kind of blow hot and cold on major exhibitions. They were absent from one Bauma, then they were at the next one. They ducked out of ConExpo in 2020 because of fears over COVID, but then they were back for the last one, and so on down the line. But the one thing that they've remained consistent at is hosting their own Volvo Days. They've been doing it for decades, and this one, the one that is taking place, well, I was at the launch event on Monday, Tuesday this week. It's going on for best part of a month, attracting thousands of visitors and press and influencers and various other people from around the world. This is the biggest one they've ever done. More than 100 machines, lots and lots of Volvo people in attendance. And this is what the fuss was all about. It was some event. It really was, which is why we're going to produce this feature-length film. I've done the basics of it. I can tell you I'm already up to 25 minutes, and there is still more to be added into. So look out for that. Dan is saying good morning to Mr. Norton Ken Hatcher. He's apparently I have frozen down in Welsh Wales. I'm watching I'm watching 4 versions of this. I'm not frozen. It's your system that's frozen, I hope. Dan, going back to the rotary wheels on the Caterpillar machines, I don't know if I'd be interested in having that rotary wheel on a machine. Looks like a lot of strain on the machines. You see the vibrating and movement on the dipper must cause wear and tear. It does, unquestionably, but word on the street, and I've literally asked this question to the experts, word is much less wear and tear on the machine, the dipper, the boom, the machine entirely, than a hydraulic breaker. I'm giving you facts here, people. Why is there a bigger cab on the ADT and not on the 100-ton dump truck? Trust me, I've been in the 100-ton dump truck. Plenty of room in there. Plenty of room in there. Room for a couple of people in there, jockey seat and all. Not a problem whatsoever. And have Volvo incorporated a car-style seatbelt like bell? I wish I'd been paying attention. I don't know. And I'm kicking myself for not noticing that. Noticed lots of other things, but not that. Gary Muirhead has just arrived. Gary, as you will know, you have missed today's Free Money and Dancing Girls, but you're welcome nonetheless. It is time to move on. That was the Volvo Days. As I say, there is going to be a feature-length version of that film coming down the pipe very, very soon. I'll keep you posted on that. But we're off to talk telescopic handlers with Kramer in just a moment.
If you are enjoying this episode, please consider supporting the show. You can leave us a tip at buymeacoffee.com/demolition news.
Yeah, back in the day, about 1,000 years ago, I used to do the PR for Kramer here in the UK. One of my favourite machines of all time, the 312 SL. Little articulated compact loader, fantastic stuff. But Kramer, part of the Wacker Neuson family these days, they also do a damn fine line in telescopic handlers. Have a look at this one. Gary, yeah, it's a thing. It's a thing that they do at Volvo. I had it in Japan when I went to Japan with Caterpillar. I had the same thing, although they didn't clap, they bowed. And I have to say, it made me chuckle, but it made me feel a little self-conscious when you're walking through. There's basically a guard of honor, and we're talking probably 100, maybe 150 people standing there applauding your arrival. And there were high fives to be had. And at one point I said to somebody, I don't know who you've mistaken me for, but I'm not him. But yeah, they stand and they applaud. And it's a real ice-breaking way to get the day underway. I'm not buying into, I don't consider myself some kind of celebrity or anything like that. But that delight that they show in receiving you at the Eskilstuna facility is replicated throughout the day. At one point, Fred wanted to film. They've got a hydraulic staircase on one of their big excavators. So, you basically press a button, stairs unfold, you climb up into the cab from ground level, it goes all the way down to the ground, and then you can fold it away afterwards. Fred wanted to film that. So we went up to top of the hill, EC950. Can we get close up and film this staircase? And the guy said, yeah, of course you can. Well, while Fred was doing that, and they were very accommodating, they did it 2 or 3 times so he could film it. The guy said, yeah, have you seen this? And he was showing me the some of the electronic digital devices that go. I went to do 30 seconds of filming. Ended up spending 20 minutes talking to this guy about digital solutions because they are just so welcoming. So fantastic stuff. And looking forward to showing you the feature-length film. As I say, we're up to about 25 minutes now. I reckon it's going to be about a half an hour by the time we're finished. Maybe even more than that. So look out for that. Gary Muirhead says, morning, Dan. Good to see you back. Yeah, good to see you back indeed. I do feel that a car-style belt on machines can be more effective than the waist and more visible to who is and isn't wearing theirs. Rally type belts. Full body harnesses with a clip in the middle. Why not? Brits don't just complain about the weather. They compete on it. We do, don't we? We do. Funnily enough, bizarrely, I was in Sweden. When was I in Sweden? A couple of days ago. And I phoned home. And I was sat there, sunshine out the window, looking out over a beautiful sunset. And my wife's first response was, "Not how are you? It was a safe. Did you have a safe flight?" "Oh, it's pouring rain here." Yeah, always the way. Sounds like every individual was very knowledgeable. Yeah. And so there's a guy who works for Volvo. I'm going to single him out. A guy called Peter Bauer. My guess is he's German. I'm fairly sure he's German. But he is one of their demolition specialists. You may recall I interviewed him when we went to, what was the place called? Erlanger. We were invited to go and see an all-electric demolition site maybe a year ago, and Peter was one of the people talking there. And I bumped into Peter in the demolition area of the Volvo Days. Literally just wanted to get a bit of filming done. Half an hour later, the pair of us were still stood there chewing the fat, and he wanted to tell us about all the new things they got coming up. And interestingly, and I did mention it on the show yesterday as part of the morning monologue, it was him that was telling me about this German town. It is Erlanger, where we went before. The local people and the local community were so impressed by the all-electric demolition project that they've now got another project coming up, and they have insisted, we want it electric again, please. We don't like this diesel nonsense. We'll have electric again. That's the way it's going. Chris Ford is here as well. Morning all, sat in the late corner again. Not a problem at all. In fact, you've beaten Jim Turner to the punch, so you're kind of early. Gary says, were there any Volvo logo cakes on display for your enjoyment? There were no cakes with Volvo logos. If there were, I didn't find them. But we stopped for lunch 15 minutes because we were still filming. Stopped for lunch. If you see the film, there's a grandstand. Well, below the grandstand, there's this huge open area, which is where they host the lunch. And we had very, very IKEA style. So it wasn't little meatballs, it was one big meatball, but lingonberries and all the good stuff. But yes, on our way out, there was cake. There was cake. And despite my my new slim physique, and despite the diabetes that lurks just under the surface, threatens to drag me under at any moment, I grabbed a bit of cake and glad I did. It was delicious. Mainly, well, I'm fairly sure it was a delicious cake anyway, but the fact that I'd not eaten cake in 2 months made it even more special. So yes, let's crack on, shall we? We've done Kramer, haven't we? So yes, Komatsu. I'll tell you more about Komatsu in just a moment.
Since the finance bill came into effect in April, the construction industry has seen a surge of fuel thefts. The rising cost of living has placed an additional risk of theft by employees and contractors, as well as opportunistic thieves. By using diesel dye and placing warnings of its use, you are sending a clear message that this is your fuel.
Now, this is going to be a bit of a challenge for me because I've just realised I was hoping to have something prepared and I didn't. So, next, where are we? It's the 4th today. So next Wednesday, it's next Tuesday evening, but next Wednesday, I am going to see Komatsu. We've been invited to meet up with Komatsu at the headquarters in Oxford of Atlassian Williams. You know, the Formula One racing team? Obviously, there is a very strong connection between Komatsu and Williams Racing. Well, we're going to their headquarters. I'm sure there will be a degree of Formula One theme about it, but we're actually going specifically to talk about the latest PC220 excavator and all the tech that is contained within it. Well, I'm going to show you a Komatsu film now. While you're watching that, I'm going to rush next door and pick up a thing because I want to show you a thing. A minute and 39. I should probably have enough time. So I should have enough time. It's not like I'm going to go to the West Wing. The house isn't that big. But yeah, here's Komatsu, and I'll come back and tell you more about the other thing in just a moment.
At Komatsu, we take pride in delivering innovative products and solutions that empower owners, operators, and fleet managers to work smarter. Driven by real-world feedback, we've integrated cutting-edge technology into our next-generation Dash 12 excavators through IMC 3.0. New IMC 3.0 features include 3D boundary control. This defines restricted zones within the 3D design surface. The excavator automatically stops before entering these zones, promoting job site safety. Auto swing. This streamlines truck loading and improves cycle times. With a simple button press and reference point setup, operators achieve faster, more efficient swings. Swing to line. This enables operators to set a trench line, and the machine automatically swings the boom and arm to align with the trench center, reducing guesswork and improving precision. Travel along line. This keeps trenching consistent. Once a trench line is set, the excavator auto tracks along the center, maintaining accuracy throughout the operation. These are just a few of the latest innovations Komatsu has invested in to help increase productivity at job sites. Contact your local Komatsu dealer for more information and learn more about IMC 3.0 at komatsu.com.
Made it. Okay, so let me just address the chat first. Let's see what's going on there. Dan says, I'm watching you in surround sound on tablet and phone. Well, fantastic stuff, because I'm about to show you a thing that not many people get to see, and one person will end up owning. So I told you I'm going to see Atlassian Williams and Komatsu to talk about their PC220 LCI-12, okay? I've had an invitation. I had an email invitation to this more than a month ago, and agreed to go. You know, I'm a fan of Komatsu, fan of the particular machine. So I thought, yes, I'll go to that. Well, lo and behold, I came back from Sweden to find that I've had another invitation. Only this one is a little more official. So here it is. Okay. I hope you can see that. Built with racing spirit, driven by smart technology, it says. Okay. Quite a grand invitation. As you can see, it's quite a thick thing. Oh, it gets better than that. Check this out. It opens up.
I'm Carlos Sainz, driver for Atlassian Williams F1 team. You are invited to the launch of the brand new Komatsu PC220 at Williams Experience Center in Grove. Come and discover the most advanced excavator ever designed.
Yes. It's a digital electronic invitation from a Formula One driver who...
Hi, I'm Carlos Sainz, driver for
Carlos,
Williams F1 team.
somebody? I wish I knew more about Formula One. But that invitation, and it comes in its own little thing there. It's got a charging cable, which goes in there. I'm going to be giving that away. I'm going to be giving that away. It won't allow you access to the event, I'm afraid. But yes, I will be giving that away. Probably after the event. I think that's only appropriate. Shouldn't really be giving away gifts before I've actually used them. But that is going to be up for offer. So if you're a bit of a Komatsu fan, if you fancy having that as a bit of a collector's item, it will be up for offer. Dan says, I wonder how McHale are doing with their takeover of Komatsu. Rather well, from all I understand. They've certainly got some new kit out and about. That's cool, says Chris. And Dan Cullen saying that's cool. Yeah, I'm impressed with it, but I think it should go to a better home rather than just being here and collecting dust on my shelf. I'm going to give it to somebody that deserves it. I'm doing that event. I tell you what, I'm going to wind back. I'm not going to do it like that. I'm going to donate it. I'm not going to give it away. I'm going to donate it, and I'll tell you more about that in just a moment. No, I'll do it now. I was planning to do something along the lines of Formula One and stuff like that, which I know absolutely squat about. But we have somebody in our midst that does. Gary Muirhead says, my daughter is a massive F1 fan, and she would love that. Fingers crossed. Well, uncross your fingers, Gary. Never mind competitions. I've got loads of other stuff to give away. I've got Bobcat stuff and JCB stuff coming out of my bloody ears. I'm going to donate that to Gary Muirhead's daughter, who will actually get some fun out of it. So, yes. If I can pick up another one, I'll put that up for offer. But Gary Muirhead's daughter is getting that one. And you'll just have to fight over Bobcat hats and Bobcat notepads and Bobcat models and so on down the line. So yes, Gary, I've already got your address. I'll be putting that in the post for you in the very near future. Look out for it. Mick Norton says, Japanese good manners are legend. Tipping is refused because good service is considered a duty, not a transaction. Yeah. I've been to Japan once, and I was actually there with a couple of Americans, and they were genuinely stunned. I mean, the Americans take a very different approach to that, in that, you know, a lot of waiting staff, for example, in hotels and restaurants, paid the bare minimum, and they make up their wages by tips. And as a result, customer service there is it's kind of done out of not duty. It's a case of, well, I've got to give good service because I need to make the tips in order to make up my wages. Japan, the complete opposite. You know, they see it as their duty to provide good service. You're absolutely right. And Mike Wolf is in our midst. Mark, I've got one of those electronic invites too. My eldest son is a big F1 fan. He'll get mine. Well, there you are. They're all going to the right people. Good to have you. I take it you're going, are you, Mike? In which case, look forward to seeing you there. Gary says, thank you, Mark. That's very kind. She would love that. Well, give it to her with my best regards. And Dan is also a fan. Great job. Well done, Mark. Well, listen, wasn't my idea. It was Gary's idea, but I'm glad he came up with it. We've got one more film to show you today. But first, let's remind you very quickly that Hillhead is almost upon us. Gary's just said, I won a competition for 2 Lego F1 helmets, and she was so made up. This will definitely top that. Thanks again. Not a problem at all. Not a problem at all. I'm just glad it's going to a good home, because otherwise what I would do, I'll tell you now what I'd do. I'd take it with me on the day probably, and then I'd put it on the shelf behind me, and I'd forget all about it, and then I'd throw it away, which would be a complete waste. So there you are. We're putting that to a good home. Now, for some reason, that is not going away. That's better. As much as I want to go to Hillhead, it's not working out at the moment, says Dan. Well, as much as I am kind of half looking forward to it, half dreading it, I'm going to be there for the opening day. So hoping to catch up with a few folks while we're there. For the first 7.5 years of my life, I was an only child. I won't bore you with the details, but I was an only child. Then my little sister came along, and we became a pair. Probably explains a lot about my personality, that I didn't have somebody to keep me in check. I was the oldest, and I was arrogant and egotistical, traits which remain to this very day. I've always felt like I would have hated to have been the little brother. I'd have hated that, in somebody else's shadow. I was reminded that with JCB. Loads of us went up to JCB to see the launch of a bunch of new equipment, the JCB 715 ADT, a whole bunch of new compaction equipment, the 3CX Sightmaster, the hydrogen-powered backhoe loader, and, of course, topping the bill was the 520X, JCB's biggest ever excavator. And lurking in the background, kind of unseen and unheralded, was its little brother. This is the little brother. As little brothers go, that's a pretty good little brother. I think you'll agree. What have we got in the chat? Mike Wolf says, see you there. You're looking forward to it, Mike. I don't know if you're traveling up the night before, but I certainly am. I'm going to make the most of it while I'm there. One thing I love about JCB, says Dan, they have plenty of lights in comparison to other stingy manufacturers. And he also says, looks a tidy piece of kit. I agree. Yeah, I got up close and personal with the 420X while we were up there a couple of weeks ago, and very, very good it looks too. Lee Mansfield, welcome back, Lee. Says, good morning, mate. Sorry I haven't watched you the last few days. I've been busy, Lee. Listen, I don't expect a note from your mother. That we don't work like that here, but it's very, very good to have you back in our midst. You've basically missed all of the fun stuff. You missed the Volvo Demolition, the Volvo Days, and you've missed the Kramer telehandler, the dancing girls, the free money, but you've arrived just in time for the morning monologue, which I'm going to do in just a moment because it is that part of the show. I'm going to roll the outro and then leap into my leap gazelle-like over to my morning monologue. If you can't stick around for that, please stay safe. Look after yourself, your family, your friends, and your colleagues. I hope to see you again very, very soon. But if you do have the time and the inclination, and ideally, if you've got a bit of a thing about football, it's not all about football, but there's some football in there, stick around and I'll be back immediately after I've tidied up my screen and pressed this button here. This time next week, the 2026 World Cup will kick off as Mexico take on South Africa in Mexico City. Almost a week later, England will get their campaign underway when they play Croatia. And then our newspapers and TV shows will follow an all too familiar pattern. If we lose our opening game, there will be recriminations. There'll be questions over the appointment of a German manager. There'll be questions over the players who didn't get picked or who got picked but were then played in the wrong positions. If anything, it'll be even worse if we win our opening game. There'll be the usual calls of "it's coming home," even though it, whatever that elusive it is, has only come home once, and that was 60 years ago. 6 decades of constant and continual disappointment, and yet the nation still buys into the hype every few years. In so many ways, the UK demolition and construction industry is like the England football team. I'll do that again because it sounded weird. In so many ways, the UK demolition and construction industry is like the England football team. It too has some great players who possess outstanding talent. But all too often, for one reason or another, the industry falls short. It has the requisite skills to go all the way, but it goes out in the quarterfinals. Think about the government's plans to build 1.5 million new homes in 5 years. Our manager, Keir Starmer, assured us all that this was not some impossible dream, but an achievable goal, even though it had never been done before. Like countless England managers before him, his ambition and his determination were infectious. Soon, even seasoned professionals started to believe. But then reality bit, and it bit hard. It was clear to all that the goal was noble and worthy, but the system was all wrong, and we'd failed to attract the dynamic young talent required to bring the manager's dream to fruition. The Mammoth HS2 project is an even greater representation of the similarities between the UK construction industry and the England football team. The goal was simple: beat planning and environmental regulations in the first round, take on Birmingham in the second round, beat Leeds and then take on Manchester in the final. We never made it past Birmingham. Then there was the tunnel that had been designed to run beneath Stonehenge to relieve the traffic bottleneck on the journey down to Devon and Cornwall. But like England in 1974, 1978 and 1994, the project failed to qualify. Those who should have been involved in this exciting and extremely necessary project were left sitting at home watching the industry's game from their sofa. And now comes another lofty but insurmountable goal. Skills England announced this week that the UK construction industry will require an additional 1 million workers by 2035 if it is to achieve its ambitions and maintain its current output. This is far from the first time the industry's increasingly desperate need for workers has been highlighted, and it probably won't be the last. And yet, all the while, the industry-wide skill shortage has remained. We've continually failed to attract new, young talent. We've continually failed to stem the flow of older and more experienced workers out of the industry. We've watched what football commentators call the golden generation age and retire with no real plan to replace them. In football at club level, you can buy success to a degree. If your pockets are deep enough, you can buy talented players to take the team to the next level. At international level, and indeed within the construction industry, that route is kind of closed to us. And when buying success is off the table, you have to grow it. The industry desperately needs something akin to a youth academy to nurture the next golden generation, creating a squad that could genuinely compete on the global stage. If you look at the English Premier League, it's easy to see that the recipe for success lies in longevity. Alex Ferguson at Manchester United, Arsene Wenger at Arsenal, and Pep Guardiola at Manchester City were managers of their respective clubs for a decade or more. Compare that to the UK construction industry. Every time the cabinet reshuffles or Downing Street changes hands, we get a new housing minister or a new transport secretary throwing out the previous playbook and rebranding the targets and leaving the blokes on the ground completely confused about the strategy. But I'm done. I refuse to buy into the hype any longer. I've been disappointed in the England football team and by the UK demolition and construction industry far too many times to fall for this hyperbole any longer. Attract 1 million new workers over the next 9 years? There's more chance of aliens landing on the lawn of Buckingham Palace, more chance of England winning the World Cup, more chance of world peace, more chance of a white Christmas in Australia, more chance of Donald Trump telling the truth, of Elvis staging a comeback, of the Rolling Stones actually retiring, and of the royal family getting real jobs. As a football fan, I will be watching the World Cup. As an Englishman, I'll be doing so with no expectations. As someone who's worked in and around the UK demolition and construction industry for nigh on 40 years, I'll be watching the sector trying to attract new blood, and likewise, I'll be doing that without any expectations. Experience has taught me that the sooner you can divorce yourself from any hope, the more enjoyable the viewing becomes. There you are. Am I hopeful for England? No. Am I hopeful for Scotland? No. Am I hopeful that we'll attract 1 million new demolition and construction workers in the next 9 years? No. What have we got people saying over here? Let's have a look. Let's pop over here. Chris Ford says, hope the weather is better when Hillhead is on, or the quarry has its own microclimate. It really does. For those of you that are unfamiliar, I have been, this is absolutely genuine, and bearing in mind that Hillhead takes place in June, I have been there. I've been sunburnt there. I have been rained upon to the point where I couldn't get the camera out of the bag. And on one occasion, and I wish I'd made a mental note of exactly when it was, it snowed. It snowed in June at Hillhead. It really did. I don't understand this. They build it up, then it's like a tomato on the floor, flattened. A tomato on the floor. There's a mental image. This is why I can't and don't understand why people get worked up about football. I think part of it, and I mean this in the nicest possible way, I think part of it is because we don't have wars anymore. You know, we have precious little to get patriotic about, and I think when a World Cup or a European Championships rolls around, it's a chance to fly the flag without appearing to be a racist and to get behind things. But ultimately, you know, and we do it all the time. I've mentioned it. You know, football's coming home. Football came home in 1966, and it's been oddly absent ever since. And it's going to remain that way. And when you look at the construction industry, which obviously is the main reason that we're here, you know, I mentioned a couple. I mentioned HS2. I mentioned the Stonehenge Tunnel. I mentioned the 1.5 million new homes. Literally, as those things are being written in the press or they're being given as statements in Parliament, most right-minded people will go, yeah, really? Are you mad? Are you mental? Are you off your meds? What the hell's going on? And yet, you know, you kind of buy into it. You know, despite having reported on failed and partially failed projects over almost 40 years, you know, when HS2 was announced, yeah, what a fantastic thing this is going to be. All that employment, all those skills, all that legacy. Oh, yeah, I completely forgot we're in Britain. That ain't going to happen. And exactly the same with the 1.5 million new homes. And seriously, 1 million new workers. We are currently losing workers faster than we're attracting them. I would love somebody to explain, yes, we may well need 1.5 or 1 million new workers. I'd love somebody somewhere to explain how they hope to actually make that happen. I'd love to hear it. If anyone's got any ideas, and I genuinely, while I was writing that, I was actually, you know, doing the comparison. My beloved team, West Ham, they are the also-rans. We're relegated this year. We're down in the doldrums next year. But one thing that West Ham have done over the years very, very well is we've always had a very good academy. You know, we find kids of 8, 9, 10, 11 years old, spot something in them, some potential, and then nurture them, bring them into the club. And lo and behold, you know, some of the biggest names in British or English football over the years have come up through that academy. Jermaine Defoe, Joe Cole, Michael Carrick, Mark Noble, and so on. Lots and lots of very, very big name footballers have come up through the academy. We as an industry do not have that academy. Yes, we have the CITB, which I'll leave you to decide whether or not it's fit for purpose, but we don't have that youth academy, that going and finding talent and bringing them in and nurturing them and helping them along the way and clearing the path ahead of them. I wonder when they make me Minister for Construction, that will be top of the bill, a youth academy. Gary Muirhead says, we're getting a national holiday in Scotland for Scotland's first game on Monday the 15th. Whole country is getting a day off with loads of hangovers, I'm thinking. Who have you got in the opening game, Gary? We've got a tough one. We've got Croatia, which is not going to be a walk in the park, I wouldn't have thought. Lee Mansfield says, I had a JCB JS200, 1996. I got that digger, and what a great digger. Much better than the diggers today. Yeah, not much wrong with the JS range at all. Well, I say that. Not much wrong with the JS range, full stop. However, the X Series, streets ahead. I've been up close with the 370, with the 420 and the 520. Proper job. And I'm not saying this because I'm on the payroll. I'm not saying it out of some blind patriotism. They're the real deal. The 520X is the real deal. Dan says, this is a conversation I had with Nigel the other night. Both came to say, how can they or do make these numbers up on every site? As on every site, they always get the men they require. I don't necessarily agree with that. There is unquestionably a shortfall, and I think there's also a difference. I think there's a difference between workers on site and warm bodies on site. You know, if you really wanted to, you could probably go down the pub on a Friday night and say, do you fancy a week's work next week, fellas? And you get 2 or 3 that would turn up and drive a broom or that kind of thing. But if you're talking about genuinely skilled engineers, operators, operatives, I think that's a different game. And the facts speak for themselves. There are lots of projects that are either delayed or they are running behind because they do not have sufficient talent, sufficient competent people. More chance of Star Wars 1.5 million new houses by the end of the term. Have you seen how many have been built so far? The last I heard, I think we've been generally been running behind. I think for a number of years the aim was round about 225 to 250,000 new homes per year. I don't think we've ever actually accomplished that, but that was always the aim. As far as I'm aware, and I need to check this, but I'm just going to throw this out there. As far as I'm aware, we, rather than actually going up, as part of this plan for 1.5 million new homes, we've actually built less. I'm not even sure last year we did 200,000. So yes, not just going to miss the target. We're going to miss the target by a country mile. Imagine, I want to stick with the football analogies. Imagine Keir Starmer, he's stood in the penalty box, the ball is on the penalty spot, he's about to run up and take the kick, and rather than going in the back of the net, as he had originally planned, it goes out and skims the corner flag. That's kind of where we are at the moment. Where is the actual home of football? It's got to be Brazil, isn't it? Got to be Brazil, surely. I realise they, like most teams, they've blown hot and cold, but I'm fairly sure they've won more, if not as many as any other nation. Germany and Brazil, I would say. And to my mind, as an actual football fan, Brazil play football the way it's supposed to be played. Speaking of Brazil, Johnny Marzo has just joined us from Brazil. Bom dia, my friend. Bom dia from Brazil, and good luck in the World Cup. I was going to say, if you're a football fan, but he's Brazilian, I'm sure he is a football fan. Stefan Edwards says, in the Netherlands, we're also facing staff shortages. One thing we do have, though, is a specialist training program for civil engineering, geotechnical engineering, and concrete construction. You can also train to become a machine operator there, but that's just a drop in the ocean. I wish I could remember the name of the college that I went to in the Netherlands to see some electric machines working. And the way that they're operating there is it's almost like an extension of school. So there is a college there, There is a college that takes people from, I can't remember what age they were, but you can actually go from school into this place and learn various aspects of construction. And they're so far ahead of us. You know, they're already looking at electric machines. They're already looking at hydrogen machines. They are properly gunning for these things. And Johnny Marzo has caught me out because he's replied to me in Portuguese. Bom dia, mi amigo. I'm fairly sure that's good day, my friend. But well, bom dia to you too. Thank you very much. Gary says, I'll be sitting in my house wearing Scotland top singing, no Scotland, no party. Gary, I wish you well. I wish you well. Hope the Tartan Army are very, very happy at the end of the game. In 2025, 170,390 homes were built in the UK. That's a 7.6% drop. We're aiming uphill, and we've gone downhill. Yeah, fantastic. Apparently, Gary, Scotland have got Haiti on Sunday the 14th, 2 o'clock kickoff. 2 o'clock in the morning. Oh, bloody hell. Well, no wonder you've got the day off. Hi, guys, says Andy Thornton. The prodigal son has returned. Hasn't been quite the same without you, Andy, but you're very, very welcome. Dan says this still remains 12% lower than previous years, although Andy Thornton actually says 275,000 have been built, 275,600 to be more accurate. Over what period, though? Because I was sure I saw somewhere that we were aiming for more and we'd actually achieve less. Maybe I've misread that. It might be said the HS2 and the English could have similarities. Massive hype and very little progress. Yeah, that's it. That's the truth of it. And Stefan says, must be the Soma College. It was. Now you've said it, the name rings a bell. Yes. I spent over 2 visits. I spent about 4 days there. And lots of things impressed me with it. 2 things that really stood out. We popped inside for a cup of coffee, and classes were changing, you know, where you move from class to class. I reckon it was half and half, male and female, which was an absolute delight to see. But the other thing that I found really, really refreshing, and I wish it was one of those things that you could bottle. We were testing battery swap technology out in the big open area they've got at the college. And we were doing so at lunchtime. And all of the college students had a break, you know, to go and get a bite to eat or go off and have a fag or whatever it might be. Literally hundreds of them came and sat on the cold grass to watch what we were up to. It wasn't part of their curriculum. They weren't forced to do so. They weren't even encouraged to do so. They had a break and they went, oh, diggers, let's go and have a look. And they were asking questions. You know, they came over and checked out the battery and how it worked. That's how you do it. Gavin Ellison is in our midst, or Gavin Elson is in our midst. Even though I know his name, I misread it. What the hell's that about? Morning, Gavin. Good to have you back. Dan says there's nothing in this industry at the moment to entice new operators or people into construction. No, which is, again, I think is why. I think that's why we need this youth academy. I think if we're just looking for people to push brooms and to stand there and hold the stop-go sign on a road project, maybe not. But if we're looking for the next generation of engineering superstars, you know, the people that are really going to drive this industry forward, I do believe that a youth academy is the way. Go out. Don't wait for them to come to us. Go out, as they do in football, scouting at school level. Who are the bright young things that we could bring in and nurture and aim in the right direction and encourage and inspire to take this industry to the next level? Youth Academy in construction. You heard it here first. When it's adopted, I'm sure I'll get my payout. That's true, but that's true too. But another problem is the rates aren't rising with cost of living and everyone's complaining about it. No one will stand up and get together and pick it. No, they won't. No, they won't. Andy says those figures were up to November 2025. Was that when did Starmer come in? It was more than a year ago, or more than 2 years ago, wasn't it? Dan says, very well, Andy. My Google said 170,390 in 2025. Let's put it like this. Whatever the actual figures are, The 1.5 million new homes in 5 years. Pipe dream. See Hinckley workers locked out of site after canteen sit-in. A week of sit-ins. Yes, I did see that. Police presence was also evident on site, and they told to go home and don't come back until Monday. See, there was a time, I'm not going to say it was the good old days, but there was a time when other parts of the industry and other industries would have looked at that and said, we're with our brothers. We too are going to come out and support. Not anymore. Not anymore. It's every man for himself these days. There is no unionization. There is no organized outcry, outrage. Nothing. That's where we are today. That's where we've been led, but it's also where we've allowed ourselves to be led. Mick Norton says, as a lifelong Southampton supporter, I can sympathise with West Ham. Both teams produce brilliant academy players and then watch them leave for someone else with a bigger trophy cabinet. Yep. Yeah, if you absolutely want to see the very best West Ham players, look where they ended up playing. Current Premier League champions, Arsenal. Who was their best player this year? Declan Rice. Where did Declan Rice come from? West Ham. Yeah, pains me to say it. Illusory Commission. How are you doing, mate? He says over on Instagram. Would you fancy a good tickle? Well, I've never knowingly turned down a good tickle. Illusory Commission. Tell me more. Why do others not follow this? Make a stand. No wonder no one wants to be in the industry. No one has your back. Yeah, and I wonder if that is. I wonder if that is part of it. Not just nobody has your back, but I think one of the things that would have been a real selling point of this industry in years gone by would have been the camaraderie and the banter. It was almost like in the trenches. You're all fighting the good fight together, shoulder to shoulder, every man looking after every other man and everything else. Now, half the people that are working on site don't want to be there. They'd rather be on their phone. They're probably using it as a stepping stone. Oh, I'm doing this at the moment, but if a better job comes along, I'm off. When things go wrong, nobody stands up for them. You're treated like a dog. You're picked up and put down. There's no long-term job security. If one of my children said to me, I really fancy working in construction, I don't think my immediate response would be one of, yay! It would be one of, are you sure? Have you thought about this? Have you really done the maths? Andy Thornton says, my figures come from BCIS, Building Cost Information Service, UK organisation that provides construction cost, price and inflation data used across the built environment sector. I'd like to think they have their facts in a row. But they're your best mate to your face, yeah? I don't necessarily buy into that part. It's a lesson that I've tried desperately to tell my children, is that workmates are generally workmates. Now, I kind of break my own rule in that I married a workmate. That's how I met my wife, and we've been together for best part of 40 years now. So, there are exceptions, but by and large, people that you work with are just people that you work with. And I think expecting them to have your back as such is probably a bit much. But you're all in the same boat, you would have thought. And you can either row together or you can throw each other overboard. I've always been a row together kind of guy, but that's just me. Mick Norton says the Eindhoven University of Technology. I'm not sure if this was in Eindhoven or not, because I've been to Eindhoven a lot and I don't think it was there. Dan says, okay, Andy, that's interesting. Now they have 2026 figures. All I see on this site is a majority of operators on their phone to their ear or shoulder. Unbelievable. Not even headphones. Not that helps. Where has all our world-class leading inventors that we used to have in this country, where have they gone? And look at all the inventions we've come up with, mostly Scottish people for the world. Yeah. That's that. Thanks, Stefan. Yeah, thank you. Soma is in Harderwijk. That's exactly where it is. And there's a really, really nice hotel there. Again, I can't remember the name of it, but we stayed there. We stayed there in the spring, and it was very nice, really nice. Good restaurant, good food, nice hotel room. But we then went back about 2 weeks before Christmas, and they had all the Christmas decorations up. And you go to some hotels, and they have a Christmas tree. This hotel in Harderwijk had 12 Christmas trees. It was fantastic. John the Ball says, I was an ultra high rich for Rye Demolition. We knocked down Upton Park, John, just when I thought we could be friends. I may well have seen you because I went down there. I went down there with Simon Barlow of Rye. One of the best and one of the worst days on a demolition site I've ever had. One of the worst because Upton Park is precisely where I first saw West Ham. That was, to me, that was the home of football. Going back to the earlier comment, and then going to see it knocked down. However, and I've told this story before, while me and Fred were wandering around, feeling very poor, very bad for ourselves because our beloved West Ham stadium was being knocked down, we found a football. And we had a bit of a kick around on the turf. And I'm fairly sure that either myself or Fred was probably the last person to ever kick a ball on the hallowed turf at Upton Park. True story. And I do remember while we were there, a high rich was actually taking down the roof on one of the stands. I can't remember which way round we were facing, but it was one that was, they used it in a Dave Bautista film. They kind of demolished part of it, and the roof was coming down on that. There was a high rich doing that. John, that may well have been you. You and I may actually have shared a moment without even realising we shared a moment. But you still took down Upton Park, and, frankly, I'm going to struggle to forgive that. I'll do my best. Anywho, people, that will do us for today. It's Friday tomorrow, so we're back for yet more of the same. 10 a.m. as usual. I'll tell you more about these feature-length movies that we've got coming up. First one on Bobcat, second one probably on Volvo, but others to follow as well. So keep an eye out for that. And Dan saying, have a great day, fellas. Well, I'm not going to say any more. I'm just going to echo what Dan's just said. Have a great day, fellas, and I'll see you on the morrow.